When your friend betrays their partner, would you choose silence or reveal the truth? Most people would say they'd report it, but the harsh statistics prove that very few dare to speak up. Whistleblowing is one of the most dangerous acts in the world, especially when the person you are reporting holds power and money. On the 25th of April, 2025, one of the most important survivors of the Epstein case, Virginia Giuffre, was found dead, with the official cause ruled as taking her own life. Just 1 month prior, she had completed the manuscript for her memoir, preparing to expose the crimes of more powerful figures, including prime ministers, governors, senators, and scientists. She had tweeted a warning: "I never want to take my own life. If something happens to me, please help protect my family. Too many evil people want to shut me up." In March 2025, Virginia was in a serious car accident. She claimed she was hit by a school bus, and her car was crushed like a soda can. Yet the police said no one could be dispatched to the scene. She was later hospitalized for kidney failure, with doctors estimating she had only 4 days to live. Bizarrely, the police later claimed no one was injured at the accident scene. Medical staff questioned the photos of her in the ICU. Why was she wearing a necklace? The bruises looked days old, and a kidney failure patient should be hooked up to numerous machines. From the hospital, she sent a cryptic final message to her collaborator, Amy Wallace. "If this is God's plan, I am not afraid. If my time has come, please make sure this book gets published." On the 1st of April, she sent her last email, demanding that her memoir, The Girl with No Name, be brought to light. 24 days later, she was found dead. The memoir, published 6 months after her death, detailed her 2 years of being trafficked by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to powerful people around the world. She wrote, "When a man is on top of you, his face just inches from yours, you remember that face forever, even when you want to forget." The United States Department of Justice is legally mandated to release all Epstein files by the 19th of December, 2025, including information on Ghislaine Maxwell, flight logs, a list of involved individuals, and government officials. The only information allowed to be withheld is the personal information of victims and material that could compromise federal investigations. This loophole could allow the truth to be buried once again. On the 30th of October, 2025, Buckingham Palace issued a rare statement. King Charles has formally initiated proceedings to strip Prince Andrew of his titles and honors. He will be known as Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, and will be evicted from his royal residence. The statement's wording was unusually harsh. Despite his continued denial of the allegations, these punishments are necessary. The public was shocked. This wasn't just stripping a title. It was his own brother personally casting him out. Weeks later, the House Oversight Committee released over 20,000 pages of Epstein documents, including his correspondence with Prince Andrew. People hope the full files in December will reveal all the truths, but also worry that, like before, they will just be redacted blank pages. Virginia's story begins when she was 17. Before that, she had already been trafficked twice. The first trafficker was her own father, who she alleged sold her to a family friend. The second was Ronald Eppinger, founder of the Perfect 10 Models agency. This was not a legitimate agency but a high-end escort network, charging $1,000 a night. Eppinger specialized in hunting for young girls from Eastern Europe until he met Virginia, who had run away from a juvenile detention center. That center, named Growing Together, was in reality a torture prison. They forced girls aged 13 to 17 to scream insults at themselves in the mirror and had solitary confinement cells. Once, when Virginia could swallow a disgusting mushroom soup and vomited, a guard smiled sadistically. "No problem. Now eat everything in the bowl." After escaping, Virginia hitched a ride with a kind man who let her shower and sleep, only asking that she not mess up the house when she left in the morning. She wrote, "Not all men are monsters." But the next man who picked her up, a construction worker, took her to a motel, put a gun in her mouth, assaulted her from the front and back, and repeatedly choked her until she lost consciousness. She escaped when he took a phone call. Just as she sat by the roadside trying to forget the nightmare, a luxury car pulled up. The window rolled down, and a bald old man looked her over. Next to him sat a girl her age in a red dress, smiling at her. The old man's voice was like a grandfather. Get in. I'll take care of you. Ronald Eppinger used sympathy as bait. He told Virginia he once had a daughter named Susan Marie who died in a car crash at 15. I've never gotten over it. He stroked her hair. If you want, I can be your new dad. He took her to restaurants and bought her clothes, but the tops were so short they exposed her entire midriff, and the shorts were so small they didn't fit at all. Then it was a lingerie store, where the clerk was unsurprised by the old man buying provocative lingerie for a clearly underage girl. Obviously recognizing him, there were at least 5 young girls in his house, almost all naked or semi-naked. His bedroom had a round bed and a mirrored ceiling, he announced. Tonight you sleep with me. He called her baby. Virginia wrote, I was the youngest girl there, so the nickname was fitting. I guess I wanted so badly to be someone else that I accepted it. Baby was who I was now. Eppinger not only abused her but also demanded she shave her body hair to make her look more like a child. He forced her to watch pornographic material, claiming it was a valuable skill he was teaching her. How to please men. He drove her around South Florida in his convertible, demanding she be topless. She was clearly a child, but no one called the police. No patrol car stopped them. He paraded his crimes in broad daylight. 6 months later, Eppinger passed her to a friend like a puppy. In 2011, Eppinger finally pleaded guilty to smuggling foreign nationals for the purpose of prostitution. And the punishment? 21 months in prison, a $6,000 fine, plus the forfeiture of his beloved luxury car and yacht. The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation was suspected of having long known about his activities, but letting them continue. The Eppinger files released by the Department of Justice were heavily redacted, making one worry. Will the Epstein files released in December be the same? When Virginia was 17, her father worked as a maintenance man at Mar-a-Lago, the luxury club owned by Donald Trump. She asked her father to help her find a job and became a locker room attendant. The job required making tea, cleaning, and folding toilet paper into little triangles. For this job of folding toilet paper and making tea, she unbelievably had to pass a drug test and a lie detector test. She diligently studied the 65-page employee handbook, and its rules made her feel safe. Watching the relaxed guests, she thought, maybe I can become a massage therapist too, help people de-stress, and leave my past behind completely. It was here she met Donald Trump. He was friendly, asked if she liked children and if she could babysit. She said yes and started babysitting for the children of the elite at night, earning extra income, until one day, Ghislaine Maxwell's car slowly followed behind her. Virginia wrote, I didn't know it at the time, but another predator was closing in. This predator was unlike any other. She was an apex hunter, her inner greed and dominance as strong as her beautiful, confident exterior. How I wish I could have seen through Maxwell's glamorous disguise and sensed the immense threat she posed to me. Instead, my first impression of her was the same as any other distinguished guest at Mar-a-Lago. I would be so lucky if I could grow up to be like her. One day, Virginia was at the front desk reading a book on massage therapy. A woman with an ugly bob haircut and a British accent walked over, took her hand, and introduced herself. I am Ghislaine Maxwell. She looked at Virginia's book. Interested in massage? Wonderful. Do you do massages on the side? Virginia nervously explained. She wasn't tea-trained yet. Maxwell said, I am sure you'd be great. I have a very wealthy friend, also a Mar-a-Lago member, who is looking for a massage therapist to travel with him. Want to come for an interview? He is a mathematician, very good at making money, and likes to help people. It is in Palm Beach, just 2 miles from here. Virginia excitedly told her father about this life-changing opportunity. To the house, she was led into a massage room where a hairy old man lay naked on the table. Maxwell instructed her on how to perform the massage. When she reached his buttocks, Virginia tried to skip over them, but Maxwell placed her hand over hers, guiding it. Every part of the body is important. If you skip a part, the blood flow won't be right. Then Epstein and Maxwell assaulted her together. Virginia wrote, in that moment something inside me broke. Epstein and Maxwell mocked the little hearts on my underwear. How cute. She still wears little girl's panties, Epstein said. Afterward, they forced her to bathe Epstein, shampooing and conditioning his hair. Epstein began the first of his countless lectures, talking about game theory, artificial intelligence, anything to make himself sound smart. He just had to be the smartest person in the room. She was forced to dry him with a towel and then led outside, where 2 $100 bills were stuffed into her hand. They sneered. "This is probably what you make in a week at that spa, right?" On the way home, Virginia felt hollowed out, as if someone had reached down her throat and scraped out her insides with a silver spoon. It is worth clarifying that the house at the time was pink, a stomach medicine kind of pink. It was painted white only years later. Epstein liked to explain to people why he painted the house pink. "Because I love pink. Pink represents a woman's private parts." He also said, "Women are nothing more than life support systems for their private parts." He declared, "I am not a sexual predator. I am an offender. It is like the difference between a murderer and someone who steals a bagel." And so, Virginia became a prisoner of Epstein and Maxwell for the next 2 years. She wrote, "My job was to do whatever they asked, whenever they asked. There were no bars on the windows, no locks on the doors, but I was a prisoner, trapped in an invisible cage." In the first few weeks, she shuttled between her job at Mar-a-Lago and Epstein's house. Her psychology was complex. She had already been assaulted, already traumatized, but they kept luring her back, promising that it wouldn't be for nothing, that if she behaved well, they would fund her formal training, allowing her to quit her job and become a real massage therapist. She thought, "If I give up now, then all the trauma was for nothing. But if I go a few more times, maybe they'll really fund my training." Under this complex mindset, she kept going back. She said, "When Epstein used me to satisfy his perverted desires, I convinced myself that maybe he could also help me improve myself. In those first few weeks, I told myself I could get through it, and maybe even gain something from it." One day, Epstein asked, "Why don't you quit your job at Mar-a-Lago and work for me full-time?" He gave her a large sum of cash, $2,500. It was the most money the 17-year-old Virginia had ever seen. She admitted it felt foolish to rely on him for a living. Epstein must have sensed her hesitation because he came around his desk, picked up a grainy photograph, and handed it to her. It was taken from a distance, but it was unmistakably her brother Sky. He was walking away, and you could see his backpack and the profile of his face. A wave of fear washed over her. Why did Epstein have a picture of the person she loved most? Epstein told her they knew which school her brother attended. "You must never tell anyone what happens in this house. And I own the Palm Beach Police Department, so they won't do anything." Virginia left Mar-a-Lago. This became a key point in the rumors surrounding Epstein and Trump. In the recently released documents, there are multiple emails between Epstein and others that repeatedly mention Trump. Depending on your political stance, you might interpret these emails in vastly different ways. In 2011, Epstein emailed Maxwell, "I need you to realize that the dog that didn't bark is Trump. A redacted victim was at my house with him for hours. He was never mentioned once. The police chief, etc. I am 75% sure." The redacted victim was later publicly identified as Virginia. Many netizens believe this implicates Trump, suggesting he spent hours with a victim at Epstein's house, knew what was happening but stayed silent. The dog that didn't bark. However, others argue this actually exonerates Trump. They point out that Virginia never came forward to accuse Trump of being one of the abusers. And the language used to mention Trump in her posthumously published writings is relatively mild. Some counter this by saying she mentioned in her book being forced to serve other powerful politicians and wealthy businessmen, but could name them for her own safety. When the book was published, Trump was the president. As the President of the United States, one of the most powerful people in the world, it is understandable she wouldn't dare accuse him in her book. But others say she absolutely could have, as other people had certainly accused that president of many things. The back and forth is endless. We spent hours watching the debates in the comment sections, and no one could persuade the other side. There was also an email to journalist Michael Wolff, who was providing PR advice to Epstein at the time, coaching him on how to handle the impending presidential candidacy of Trump. The 2015 email reads, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he never went to the plane or house, that will give you valuable PR and political leverage." Some netizens interpret this as, Trump might have been to the plane and the house, and Epstein might have proof. But if Trump came out and said he hadn't, Epstein would hold the leverage to expose him. Others interpret it as Trump really never went. Another email from Epstein to Wolf simply said, "Of course Trump knew about the girls." If this section about Trump seems thin, it is because the next episode will delve deeper into the main figures, including Trump, Clinton, Gates, and the conspiracy theory of whether Epstein and Maxwell were political spies. This is just the starting point of the conversation. Next up is a billionaire couple. Virginia wrote in her book, "There were others I was trafficked to who threatened to bankrupt me with lawsuits. One of them, whose name appears repeatedly in various court documents, told my lawyer that if I ever spoke publicly about him, he would use his immense wealth to keep me in court for the rest of my life. Therefore, she only referred to this person as Billionaire 1 and his pregnant wife. But in a 2016 court deposition, when she was suing Maxwell for defamation, Virginia did name some people by comparing the deposition and her memoir. Many netizens believe Billionaire 1 might be Glenn Dubin and his wife Eva. In the deposition, Virginia was asked, "Are you saying Maxwell instructed you to have sexual relations with Glenn Dubin?" "Yes." "What did Maxwell say to you?" "Same as always. They had me go and give these men massages, and when they say massage, it is in a sensual way, that is their lingo. And I am sure there are plenty of other witnesses that can attest to what massage actually means. I am telling you that Maxwell told me to go to Glenn Dubin and give him a massage, which means sex. We don't know if Glenn Dubin is Billionaire 1, nor do we know if he was an abuser. But his connection to Epstein has been widely reported in the news, and it was a rather close one. Glenn Dubin is a billionaire hedge fund manager. What fuels the conspiracy theories even more is that his wife Eva Andersson Dubin, a former Miss Sweden, reportedly dated Epstein for years before marrying Dubin in 1994. Allegedly, they even invited Epstein to their Palm Beach home for Thanksgiving dinner after his 2008 conviction. There are also rumors that Epstein was the godfather to their children. Wilder conspiracy theories suggest Epstein was an Israeli spy. Eva Dubin even wrote a letter to Epstein's probation officer, stating she was 100% comfortable with Epstein being around her own minor children. Eva Dubin testified at Maxwell's sex trafficking trial, stating she had not witnessed any inappropriate behavior or strange interactions between Epstein and any teenage girls. On the timeline, Eva could indeed have been pregnant during that period. But I want to be clear, I believe what Virginia said happened. I am just not certain if it was Glenn and Eva Dubin, although I personally find them extremely suspicious. According to recently released documents, netizens believe that in 2017, 2 years before Epstein's second arrest, he claimed in an email to have spent that year's Thanksgiving with Trump, Eva Dubin, and Glenn Dubin. The same email chain included Trump, Eva, and Glenn. This could mean something, or it could mean nothing at all. Virginia also mentioned former United States Vice President Al Gore. She recalled meeting the Gores at one of Epstein's dinner parties, describing them as a very loving couple who only had eyes for each other. However, in 2010, Gore was also accused of inappropriate conduct towards a masseuse, but he was ultimately cleared by the prosecutor. Furthermore, Virginia identified former Maine Senator George Mitchell and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. Both were high-ranking officials during the Clinton administration. Mitchell had written a glowing tribute in Epstein's birthday album, calling him a dear friend. Richardson, meanwhile, was the governor of New Mexico, the state where Epstein owned a vast ranch. Both men vehemently denied Virginia's allegations. Thomas Pritzker, the executive chairman of Hyatt Hotels, was also implicated. In her testimony, Virginia mentioned that she was forced to serve a man who owned a large hotel chain. Although there is no direct proof, Epstein had referred to Pritzker as being like family. In an email, "The corruption in academia is equally shocking." Virginia described being forced to serve a psychology professor funded by Epstein, A quirky little man with wild scientist-like white hair. Based on Virginia's early unpublished manuscript, netizens speculated this person could be Harvard University professor Steven Pinker. Pinker has strongly denied this, stating he has never set foot in any of Epstein's residences. Another individual identified is the late Marvin Minsky, an AI pioneer from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Virginia claims she was forced to have relations with the scientist, who was 56 years her senior. On Epstein's private island, flight logs confirm that during the period Virginia was being trafficked, Minsky did host a gathering on artificial intelligence with Epstein on the island. But one of the most chilling figures listed in Virginia's book is a former prime minister of a country. Virginia described this man in legal documents as a well-known prime minister. She said he was the most violent man she had ever met. He wanted violence. She described how he would choke her until she lost consciousness, only to let her recover and then do it again. It was as if he got a thrill from her fear for her life, a thrill from her begging to live. She said the terrifying part was that the prime minister laughed while hurting her, becoming more excited when she pleaded with him to stop. When I came out of the gazebo, I was bleeding from my mouth and my private parts. She said it hurt to breathe and swallow for days. She said it was the most terrifying experience of her life, and afterward, she got on her knees and begged Epstein to promise never to send her back to the prime minister again. She didn't know if Epstein owed this man or was afraid of him, but he didn't promise to never subject her to that trauma again. Only saying coldly, "Yes, you'll run into that sometimes." Virginia wrote, Epstein only cared about Epstein. She said the prime minister's assault was too severe. She detailed being sent to serve the prime minister a second time, on Epstein's private plane. She said she feared for her life, but perhaps due to the lack of privacy on a private jet, he luckily did not commit the same level of physical violence as the first assault, the choking and causing her to bleed all over. But it was still a routine violation. Virginia said, I didn't know it at the time, but my second interaction with the prime minister was the beginning of the end for me. In the book, the prime minister is not named, but not because Virginia didn't know the man's name. She said, while we need to be brave and name our abusers, we also have to protect ourselves. There are some men I am afraid to name. With the prime minister, I know his name, and he knows what he did to me. I fear that if I say his name here, this man will try to hurt me. There are two main speculations online about who this former prime minister might be. The most common conspiracy theories and ideas boil down to two. Some say it could be former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Some netizens point out how strange it was that Tony Blair was invited to the White House shortly before Virginia's memoir was published. According to some reports, Tony Blair, Prince Andrew, and Jeffrey Epstein were friends, and they all knew each other. But many netizens don't actually think the prime minister involved was Tony Blair. It is not that Tony Blair is off the hook in the eyes of netizens. Many of them dislike Tony Blair, but they believe this specific prime minister was former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. According to the Times of Israel, Ehud Barak visited Epstein 30 times between 2013 and 2017. This is obviously not the same time frame when Virginia was being trafficked, but the speculation among netizens is that those were just the years that were tracked and made public, and he may have been friendly with him for much longer. In fact, Barak himself said he met Epstein in the early 2000s. Of course, the central figure in all the allegations is Britain's Prince Andrew. On the 10th of March, 2001, in London, Virginia first met this handsome prince. Maxwell proudly introduced the 17-year-old Virginia to Andrew, as if she were a prize. That night, at a nightclub named Tramp, Andrew ordered a cocktail for Virginia and danced with her on the dance floor. Virginia recalled that he was sweating profusely. It was on that very day that Virginia, using a disposable camera, took the photo that would later shock the world. Prince Andrew with his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, while Maxwell stood behind them with an eerie smile. After returning to Maxwell's townhouse, Maxwell ordered Virginia, "Go and tend to him, just as you do for Jeffrey." Virginia wrote in her book, he acted friendly enough, but was still filled with an innate sense of superiority, as if having relations with me was his birthright. Following this, Virginia was forced to be with Prince Andrew on 2 more occasions. One time was in New York, and the other was on Epstein's private island, in a sordid group affair involving Andrew Epstein and approximately 8 other young girls. Faced with the irrefutable photographic evidence, Prince Andrew offered an absurd defense during an interview with the BBC. He claimed he could not recall meeting her, and that the photo was possibly faked. He also stated that due to an adrenaline-related issue from his time in the war, he had developed a medical condition that made him unable to sweat, so it was impossible for him to be the person sweating profusely on the dance floor. However, his medical records indicated this condition was temporary, and reporters had previously captured photos of him sweating heavily. Beyond these central figures, Virginia's book also mentions Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, for whom she was forced to massage his feet on Epstein's private plane. Also mentioned are actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker, who flew with former President Bill Clinton to Africa on Epstein's plane. Maxwell also once bragged to Virginia that at a party, she had pulled actor George Clooney into a restroom to service him. After Epstein received that infamous sweetheart plea deal in 2008 and was released after serving only 13 months, he even hosted a party for Prince Andrew at his New York home. CBS News anchor Katie Couric, comedian Chelsea Handler, and even Woody Allen were among the guests. As the Epstein documents are progressively unsealed, this vast web woven from money, power, and desire is being unraveled, layer by layer. And as for Virginia Giuffre, the whistleblower who has paid an immense personal price, her fight continues.